Hi, I'm Stacy Peasley, and you are watching Medfield.tv.
Access to our community.
This is Alex Stephen from Life Transforming Treasures. I'm your host on Live Your Passion. I'm an author, a speaker, and a transformation coach. I share my stories and wisdom of raising a successful deaf son and making a life-altering decision that empowers people to transform their lives to one of freedom and fulfillment. On Live Your Passion, we bring guests that share their stories and their wisdoms to help you on your journey. Today I have with me Mary Dyer, who will introduce herself, and we will hear from her story and what she's going to bring to us today. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome. Yeah. So just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you will some of what you'll share with us today, and we'll have the conversation.
Great.
Yeah.
So my name is Mary Dyer, and I grew up in Boston. I've lived here my whole life. I grew up in the community of Dorchester in a very, very diverse neighborhood with a large family. I am the youngest of 8. Grew up going to the Boston public schools my whole life. And I came basically after meeting you through Heidi and Tricia to just talk a little bit about my journey, my story. Hopefully, share some wisdom with people who maybe have a similar thread in their life,
Right.
and may feel that something I might say could spark something for them.
Yeah, so, and thanks very much for taking the time. And, I told you this on the phone, I love your initiative. You were looking at the shows on YouTube and you sent me an email and we started to communicate, and I thought you'll be a good candidate. Your story and what you want to share and your passion will help a lot of people. And thanks for taking that initiative to contact me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So start by, telling us a little bit of background so people will have a feel for where you came from, your childhood, and how things were, for you growing up.
Okay. As I said, I grew up in a pretty large family. It was a rough childhood. It was a childhood that had a lot of violence in my home. And I witnessed a lot of violence in my family firsthand, between my mother and father, and then also, with myself and my siblings. I have 6 older brothers, 1 sister. My father was, as far as I understand, he had a brain injury when he was younger, when he was a young man. He had a motorcycle accident, and he had some sort of injury that necessitated him not drinking ever again. My understanding is that he took that advice and actually went the other way.
The opposite.
Yeah. And, as the years progressed, he had more and more children, more pressures, being, a dad of a growing family with very limited resources. I'm sure the pressure was immense. He drank a lot. He was addicted to painkillers. And I think as a result of the addiction and his brain injury, he was, certifiably mentally ill and very violent.
So a lot of violence in the home, growing up in the home.
Yes.
And in addition to abusing your mom, he abused you all too, emotionally, physically.
Yes. You know, my whole childhood, as far back as I can remember, you know, maybe 3 years old, all I remember is violence. You know, when people ask me what it was like, the honest answer is I lived in a war zone. My father was extremely violent. He abused my mother physically and all of us kids, to the point where it would be, you know, considered brutality.
Yeah. So that was a tough situation. And how did the neighbors treat you all, I mean, from that sort of activity in your house? How was it living in the neighborhood?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it always felt to me like, you know, there was always some kind of chaos going on in my household. And we grew up in a typical, you know, Boston three-decker.
Right.
They would call them three-deckers. So, you know, we're sharing close quarters with other neighbors, you know, 3 families living in a home. And I know that they heard what was going on. They saw it firsthand. But in the 1970s, I think things were a little different. You know, people shut their door a lot, you know, and didn't want to be part of it or be involved with, I'm sure, calling the police on my father, because they were probably afraid he'd kill them.
Okay.
I mean, it was that volatile.
Yeah.
I think everybody in the neighborhood was afraid of my father. They knew him well. You know, he tormented a lot of people on the street. I can remember him sitting on the front porch in the summertime with a bottle of wine and a shotgun, just sitting on a shotgun. I don't know if it was loaded. I just remember him wanting to be a presence in the neighborhood that was, you know, don't mess with me or I'll kill you.
Wow.
And so he had that presence, and everybody in the neighborhood sort of knew Crazy Dickie Dyer, you know.
Yeah.
And it was embarrassing. It was, you know, as a child growing up in elementary school, you know, kids would ask me, what's wrong with your father? Like, why does he behave the way he does? And I never knew what to say, because I never understood it myself. I was a little girl.
Yeah, so you had to carry around that shame and embarrassment.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And how did your other siblings, how did they deal with it? Do you recall how, I mean, you being the last one, they were elder than you, so I assume they were in it longer than you were.
Right. So there's 13 years between me and my oldest sibling. Okay. So the oldest boy, he moved out when he was pretty young, 16. He never came back. I remember him very vaguely, kindergarten, first grade, and then never saw him for many years. He moved out, made his own way out of state, somehow managed to survive as a young man. So he, you know, moved out. My older brothers also, most of them dropped out of high school. Most of them got into a lot of trouble with the law, became addicted to alcohol pretty young. I think that most of the people in my family have been touched by alcoholism directly, for sure, and indirectly, just by being a product of that environment.
Right.
And myself included. I mean, I don't have any addiction problems, but, you know, being part of that environment of, you know, just seeing people drinking their life away became something of a concern for me as a young woman.
It takes a toll on you because the embarrassment, and then, I mean, how were your emotions living in that environment? Share with the audience.
Yeah. I lived my life petrified every single day. It was, I would come home from school, and by the way, school was my only place of peace. You know, I was an honor roll student. I did nothing to attract any attention to myself as being bad. So I did, all of the right things at school. I was the teacher's pet, and school was my respite. It was my way of getting acceptance and praise, and you're doing a really good job, you're really great, because I never heard that. And so in the home, I'd get home from school, and the first emotion that would hit me is, who's going to get beat up or killed today? Wow. What condition is my mother in? What is going to be going on when I walk through the door? Is my father going to be, are the police going to be at my house when I get home? It was complete, being petrified literally every day of my life.
Right. And how your mom dealt with that? How, what do you notice? What was her reaction? Did she try to do anything to, get out of the relationship, or what was her reaction?
Well, she was a victim herself.
Yeah.
She is the polar opposite of me, where, I'm very driven, I'm very focused, and I stand up for myself. My mother is the exact opposite of me, where she became a victim and stayed in that victim mode.
She stayed in there.
She stayed in that mode. I've heard through the years that her family offered to help her, to get away and to bring the children, to their home to get away from my father. But, being a battered wife, she, I think, feared for her life, that if she left him, she would be killed. So she really just dealt with it.
She just stayed in the situation.
Right.
So, Mary, it sounds, there was fear, you were petrified, there was this amount of shame, but you as a child couldn't understand it.
Right.
And rightfully so. But tell us, were there any times that you could recall growing up in that home? Were there any times of joy or happiness as a family that you could recall? Yeah.
I definitely had a childhood, and I am grateful for the fact that, when you grow up in a big family, you're each other's friend.
Right.
And so, having 7 older siblings, being the baby, I got a lot of attention from my siblings. And there were many moments of joy. Specifically, Christmas. Oh. Christmas was always a joy in my home. Somehow or another, even though we were very poor, my mother always found a way to get each of us almost everything on our list for Christmas. And, I would sit down and look at my Sears wish book catalog, and I'd circle everything I wanted Santa to bring me. And she's a very resourceful woman, and somehow or another, she was able to make Christmas a really, really joyous, magical time.
Yeah. It sounds like through all the pain and violence that she stayed and endured it for the children, I'll say.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think she didn't have the wherewithal to know, as women do now, how to be a single mother. And the resources available to women now are much different. I think my mother's only resource was her family, and she was scared for her life. So she just did the best she could to keep her family together, her children intact, go to school every day, made sure we were clothed, made sure we were fed, and the basics were met. And, other than that, the emotional bond and, all of the things, the nurturing that children need really wasn't there.
And, it's a tough situation looking at it. Your dad had this accident. That's what triggered his behavior. And your mom, with 8 children, she didn't know what choices she had. She was scared to leave. Right. But I like how you shared, that didn't keep you back. You did not stay in that past. So share with us a little bit, how you came out of that as a young girl. I know you shared how you were honor roll student in school. That's so great to be in an environment like that and achieve. That takes something inside of you.
Right.
you know, and that's good. And that's what we want people to hear, is that even though you're in these situations, you have to dig deep down and find, you know, find what it is. What is your passion? What are your dreams and your vision? And there are people out there who's going to help you if you ask for help.
Sure.
So share with us. I know you had told me about music when you were a teenager. You found music. Tell us about that, because anytime I bring that up, you always have a smile, and you know, it's such a joy. My daughter has a degree in music. I can't play anything, but she sings like you. She went to Northeastern for a degree in music.
So my brothers actually had a big part in influencing me with music. I think music has always been in my family. Even my father, you know, as crazy as he was, I remember him in the house playing a bugle, playing a harmonica, always playing country and western music. And even though he wasn't a musician, he, you know, I think he had this like wannabe musical interest. And so my two older brothers actually on their own just self-taught themselves how to play bass guitar.
Wow.
And so just watching them through the years, you know, they'd go to band practice and rock and roll bands. And I was always just sort of watching as the youngest in the family, like, I really want to know. That must be so cool. And when I became like 14 and 15, I started kind of venturing out a little to see, can I come along? Can I come to band practice? And on school nights, I'd be out till like 11, 12 o'clock at night with my older brother, and he'd let me tag along, and then I'd say, can I sing a song? And I didn't know I wanted to be a singer. I just, for some reason, felt like the music was in me. And so in years of just kind of watching in the sidelines, I remember being 12 years old. If I back up a few years, my sister took me to see Donna Summer. And Donna Summer is from Boston. And she grew up in Roxbury. And my sister took me to see her in concert. I had never been to a concert in my life. And I was so blown away. I was so incredibly inspired by her. And to this day, my sister still says, you know, when you were there, your eyes were just glued to her, like you were, you know, in some magical place. And it put a seed in me that I said, I want to be like her. I want to do what she's doing. And I just started getting really, started buying all her records and coming home every day after school. I knew every word to every song, and, you know, would go to dance contests and do all the disco thing. And, you know, it really did cultivate this love for singing that became something that I think was an outlet for me as I became 14, 15, 16, realized I was pretty good at it. And I really just honed in on that as a hobby. And it really served me well, because I felt for the first time in my life like I'm self-expressed. And I didn't have expression in my home. You know, if I ever had anything to say, I was afraid I would, you know, get a backhander. And that was not, so it wasn't an environment where you could just kind of talk as a family. So singing got me into that place where I got to sort of express my emotions.
And how did people, what sort of feedback you got? Because you sound like through the Donna Summers concert, you had that inspiration. And, you know, every time you went back to that in your mind and that space, you know, you had a good feeling. But when you perform, what was some of the feedback you got and encouragement?
Just that, you know, people that would hear me like at band practice with my brother would say, you know, you're really good. And I didn't know what I was doing, but it kind of planted a seed that maybe I should just continue practicing a little bit more and maybe take it a little more serious. So, you know, back in the day in the 1980s, I remember looking at ads in the Boston Phoenix newspaper, which is similar to like Craigslist now. And I would look for ads and just see, like, what if I joined a band? What if I auditioned for a band? Like, wow. And I just did it. And I started meeting people, and my brother would say, you know, you can come down and sing with us a couple of songs. And I don't know. I just developed into this really great rock and roll front girl, and I could front a band, of men, grown men, and I'm this 15-year-old, and I'm jumping around.
And you still do it to this day.
And I still do it.
Do it to this day. Good avenue to express yourself.
Yeah, it really is the one joy that I feel like I can always fall back on it because it's always there for me. It's never going to leave me. Yeah. It's a gift, and it's a talent. And I think with everything that I went through as a child, God gave me this gift as a way to self-soothe and to maybe also, if I take it another level, be able to inspire other people, because I've been singing since I was 15 out in clubs. And performing, I have had over the years many people come to me at a break on, at a show, and they'll say, you really made me think about somebody special when you sang that song. Or, wow, the way you sang that song, I cried. And, to hear that from a total stranger, it really does do something for your spirit. For my spirit, as somebody who I always felt like I was a broken spirit, it allowed me to feel like, oh my goodness, I'm kind of healing people. Yeah. Not trying to, but it just was. It
came naturally. Yeah. And you mentioned that, it was a gift from God. But the thing is, Mary, is that you used it. You went to practice. You gave it a chance. You gave it a try, and you got the encouragement from people, and you went with it. So when God speaks to us, we have to listen, and that's what you did. And despite the environment you came from at home, you're always looking to better yourself. Yeah. Now, tell us a little bit about your education. Okay. How you pursued I know being an honor roll student, but how you went to further your education to where you are today.
Well, as I was saying, for me as a small girl, like really elementary, school was my only place of peace. And I loved my teachers. And I was just having a conversation a couple of days ago with my family, and my sister said, when you were in elementary school, the teachers used to have to call Ma because you were constantly at every other kid's desk trying to play teacher. And I think because school gave me such a reprieve and a respite from my home life, it cultivated this natural teacher in me where I felt like it was where I could be really successful and I could help people and get attention and get praise. So I ended up actually becoming a school teacher. Now, when I was little, I don't remember saying I want to be a teacher when I grow up. But I think that the safety of school and my teachers really, really giving me that affirmation that I was good and that I was smart and all of that did something to me that made me feel like I wanted to do that for others. And so I became a school teacher. I went to college and I got my bachelor's degree in elementary education. I taught for a few years. I taught for 4 years, and it was a tough time. It was, the early 90s, and the economy wasn't great. Teaching jobs were scarce.
But you enjoyed teaching.
I enjoyed it. I just couldn't live off the salary.
The salary.
It was tough.
But in your family, you were the only one who went to college.
Correct.
Out of the 8 siblings.
Correct.
8 kids. Yeah.
Yeah, so out of 8 children in my family, only 3 graduated high school. Wow. And I went to college. My sister went to a trade school and she became a dental assistant. But as far as like formal education and a degree, I paid my way through school. I went to Lesley College, which is one of the most prestigious teaching schools in Cambridge, here in Massachusetts. And I really I did student loans. I worked. I went to school full-time, worked part-time, did anything I had to, just to be able to get through that 4-year period. And just really honed in on doing something different than the legacy, that had come before me.
Wow. So you took it upon yourself and you were motivated. You made the commitment. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your other siblings. You're the only one who's reached that level of education. In terms of, you know, your brothers, their fight with alcohol and, you know, the results, and share with the audience so they get a little more sense of the environment you came from, but, you know, the effects. It's not easy. It was destructive in a lot of ways. So, you know, explain to the audience a little bit about your dad and your brothers and where they are.
So, unfortunately, you know, my older brothers took a lot of the brunt of my father's violence because they were, you know, coming into being young men. And I think we all got our fair share of abuse, and abuse in terms of, in my experience, it was every kind of abuse you can imagine. It was physical, it was emotional, it was sexual, it was every kind of abuse that a child could endure. My brothers, my father really not only physically abused them, but very much broke their spirit. You will be nothing, you are nothing, you will do nothing. You know, the message was very clear since they could walk, that, you know, they were no good. And so some of my brothers internalized that with, you know, drug and alcohol use. My two oldest brothers passed away pretty young. My oldest brother, Bob, passed away at age 50 in 2006 from alcohol and drug abuse. And my second oldest brother, John, passed away in 1999 at age 44. And in both cases, their body was ravaged with, you know, cirrhosis from drinking, you know, all of the complications that come from every organ in your body being completely shut down, destroyed from drinking. And so, I mean, they internalized the abuse in the form of self-destruction. You know, they turned inward in a way that they had no resources. They had nobody. They didn't know any different. You know.
And you have another brother who is also, he's still alive, but he's suffering the effects of alcoholism.
Yes, so I do have another brother who's kind of in the middle of the age of my family group, and he just found out a few years ago that he has hepatitis C and cirrhosis. He is on the recipient list for a liver. So this has really run through the family.
Run through the family.
Yeah.
And there's another brother, you said, who's staying with some relatives too.
Yes. So then I have another brother who's closest to me in age. He's the next one above me. You know, he hasn't done well. He's living with a family member because he really can't take care of himself in the way, you know, that a normal functioning adult would be able to. And I think he also endured a lot of that same message. And, you know, through the beatings, it was not just that. It was, you know, you're bad, you're nothing, you'll never be anything. The words, the message that, you know, as a baby, as a child, you hear that over and over. That is what you believe.
The words could be more damaging than the physical abuse.
Absolutely, because, you know, physical abuse has its scars, but those scars go away. The ones that don't go away are the ones that stay with us, and we carry them through our whole life, through every relationship, every friendship, every person that we encounter. We have that scar in there. And some of us, you know, get help, and some of us don't. And I was fortunate because I looked up to other people and sought out mentors. And I have to say, I have to give credit. My older sister, my only sister, she was my saving grace. She absolutely took me under her wing and showed me very young, this is the way you behave. This is how a young lady, you know, acts in front of people. Go to school, stay in school, be a good student. And she taught me literally manners. I mean, how to behave around people in public. She was like my mother. So I owe a lot to my sister.
Owe a lot. And she's married, she has a family and a home. And your dad has passed away since then.
So my dad passed away, ironically, a month before my brother John. So my father passed away in January of 1999, And a month later, we always knew that my brother John was not going to live a long life, but we didn't expect a month later that we would get the phone call that he had passed away through an accident, actually, an unfortunate accident. But it was, all connected to the drinking and him not being able to take care of himself.
Yeah. So it had a toll, it really had a toll. But the thing in the story is that you came out of it. You did well in school, you expressed yourself through your music, you looked for mentors. Luckily, you had your sister. So tell us a little bit about, the things you did to get yourself out of it. Your reading, going to different, some of the things that you did. Share with the audience so they will know, how to take action.
Sure. Well, going through my 20s and 30s, I did what I think most people do when they feel like there's something in my life that doesn't quite feel healthy. We turn to a therapist, which is what I did. Many years I had different therapists where I feel like I got a benefit from it, but I also felt like I walked out of each session and I only had insights into my father, my mother, and the way that the family dynamics were, but I really didn't get any tools. Right. And years of rehashing my childhood and talking about it, it never did much for me in terms of making progress toward doing something different. Right. And so I tried therapy for many years. I also found my way to some Al-Anon meetings through a friend that had recommended it.
Explain what Al-Anon is for people who may not know.
Right. So Al-Anon is the 12-step program for people who grew up or are surrounded with an active alcoholic. So just like we have Alcoholics Anonymous for the active drinker, Al-Anon is for, pretty much the family members or the spouses of people or children of people in our family or in our lives that are still actively drinking or who we really just are affected by their drinking even if they're not in our life anymore. So in my case, my father died many years ago, but I was still affected by the whole environment, in my home. So I did some Al-Anon work for about 2 years, found that to be, it was a place of support. Again, I still didn't feel like I was getting a tool. Yes. I'm all about tools and finding ways to transform something, transform the way I think or I feel, and actually make something be different. Al-Anon gave me the support, but I still didn't feel like I was getting any tools to make a difference.
That you could use, to make a difference.
And then I just, I guess I continued on in some therapy and got on, I think I was on Meetup. Are you familiar with Meetup? So Meetup is this, it's a website that you can go on in any interest or hobby you have, anything at all. You can say hiking and you can punch in hiking and find out where there's a hiking group near you. So I happened to be on meetup.com in 2011. And I came upon this group for women, and it was called Be More You, and they were offering a free open coaching call, and I didn't quite know what it was about. So I decided, well, it's women, and I could probably use some supportive women in my life. Let me just check it out. So I got on this open coaching call, and it was about, transforming relationships with the men in our lives, but also becoming whole with who we are as women and becoming more authentic in our lives. I have been part of that group since 2011. I will have to say that group had a profound difference for me. It gave me the tools that I was saying that I was looking for, which was, finding mentors, getting coaches. We're not given the tools or a book, of how to be the person we want to be, but coaches, as you know, and you're a coach, sometimes you need to step out and find a way to get help with somebody that's not invested in it as a therapy thing, but more of wanting to see you succeed.
Someone to see you succeed. And you know, I know Heidi Bertram and Trisha Bennett, the owners of Be More You, and they have been on this show, both of them, as you know.
Yeah.
So, and I've been on the panel, my wife and I, on one of their seminars a few weekends ago. So I'm familiar with Be More You.
Yeah.
And I know you said you got a lot of results, and I spoke to a lot of the women there when Raz and I went to the seminar. They have been, you know, associated with Heidi and Trisha for years.
Yeah.
So it's a good place for women who are looking for relationships and, you know, to get help, and a supportive group.
Right.
And you can't beat Heidi's energy.
Oh,
So
no.
it's contagious. Yeah. So it's been good. What are some of the other, you know, places I know you said you read a lot too.
Yeah, I think everywhere that I heard about a great self-help book, I would just go and get that book. And, you know, I've read a lot of books.
Yeah.
I have read, you know, books about transformational work from every angle of relationships, career, spirituality, and just really honing into what is my passion. And as I've done this reading and years of, you know, self-exploration, self-examination, I get a little more, my toe goes in the water just a little bit more, and I say, wow, what if I could do things differently? What if I could have a different relationship with somebody that I care about? What if it could be better? What if the way I've been handling my life could be improved, could be more authentic, could be a little bit more joyful? And so I've read a lot of books. One of the things I also got from Trisha was she knows my story. Trisha and I lived a very similar experience as children. And she had suggested to me as a coach that I go to this program called Survivors Week. And it was out in Wickenburg, Arizona. And so I went to this program, I believe it was late 2012, and it was a week-long, almost like a boot camp program for people who are survivors of trauma.
Right.
And it was a great experience. I had a week-long, intense group of people. I think I had 6 women in my group, you know, in a classroom setting all week. We did experiential work. We did, you know, writing letters of forgiveness to our parents. We did acting out of, you know, role modeling, where we got to say, you know, I'm very angry, and pretending, for example, that your parents were in the room with you, and really getting out and really letting all of the emotions out. And so that was a great experience. Again, I came out of it feeling it was a great experience, but I didn't feel like it had given me any tools to move forward, to do something different, you know. So I also had heard about Landmark Education.
I've been to Landmark.
You've been to Landmark, so you have a little bit of experience. Again, from the Be More You group, I think just about every woman in that group had done Landmark. And I kept hearing, what is Landmark? What is this? Everybody keeps talking about Landmark. And so last March, so a year ago this month, I decided I'm just going to go find out what all these women seem to be so fired up about. Yeah, fascinated with that it changed their whole way of how they view the way they are in the world. And so I took the Landmark Forum, loved it, absolutely found it. This was something I could work with. Right. Finally, I felt like,
tools.
I got something in my back pocket that I can go home with and, you know, actually put into use. And all of the distinctions that I learned about being authentic, being courageous, letting your past stay in the past. So in other words, not denying it and not saying it didn't happen, but really and truly letting it stay in the past where it belongs and not letting it define me for how I'm moving forward, which is, I think, where I was stuck. I was letting that story of my past define how I was going to be in relationships with with women friends, boyfriends,
Yeah.
family. And I finally felt like I had a tool I could say, now here's something I can use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how I mean, your life growing up, you dated guys, and explain a little bit to people who are looking the audience. How were those relationships?
Yeah. Well, I had many relationships with many different boyfriends. Some of them were pretty lengthy. I had a 4-year relationship when I was younger in college. Very good relationship, actually. That one, I think we just sort of outgrew each other because we were both like 21 and we were just going different ways. But I noticed every relationship after that, some of them were like a year and a half, but most of them were pretty short-lived. And what I found is that I was getting to be in my 20s and 30s. The pattern was that I was choosing men just like my father. So I was choosing what I like to call the fixer-uppers. The men with self-esteem issues, the men with addiction issues, alcoholism, drug abuse, really, really low self-esteem. Men who I think in my own way thought, well, I can help them be the best that they can be. I will be able to bring them into a better life, thinking I could save them.
Yeah.
And in that process, I was always disappointed because I had all these expectations that if they just do what I tell them,
Be in control.
be in control, and just follow what I'm telling you. This is the way you do it. And if you don't like your life, then do it this way. And people can't just do that when they're in the throes of addiction or poor self-esteem. Yeah. And so I like that saying, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. Yeah. That was me. I kept choosing the same type of guy over and over and wondering, why am I not in a great relationship? And even though it seemed so obvious, it was right in front of my face, I guess I was in denial. I didn't realize it was my own choosing. Yeah. I chose this type of person. And so through the Be More You group, for 3 years, I got a lot of help with loving myself first. Like really and truly love yourself first. Because
despite of what happened in the past.
And because also you won't have successful relationships with not even women friends, never mind men. Yeah. If you're really truly not putting yourself first, loving yourself first, and really truly finding what it is that makes you happy and making that a priority. So I had to learn that very late in my life.
But you never stop learning. That's one of the things I admire about you with your education at school, your job. Tell us a little bit about your job. Let people know where you came from and, where you are with your job.
Okay. Well, as I had mentioned, I went to school to be a teacher, loved it, couldn't live off the salary. I was literally buying groceries on credit card. I had no money. So in the aftermath of deciding that teaching wasn't going to pay my bills, I decided to get into office secretarial work. And started off as a receptionist. I went to a temporary agency. I said, I can type, I can answer phones, put me to work. Yeah. And I ended up getting a job as a receptionist, and all of a sudden my salary was 3 times what it was as a school teacher. Yeah. I had a brand new car for the first time in my life. Wow. And so I just kept going in that direction and really absorbing this corporate environment of smart people, real bright people who really taught me a lot. Just by being in an environment of people that were pretty well educated, I got that hunger to keep just getting more and more skills and getting, more and more increase in pay. And through the years, I was actually able to just keep getting my technical skills up to speed. And then I got a job at Fidelity Investments in 1998. Started out kind of in the entry-level secretarial pool, and in 2005 I became a manager, and I now manage 15 administrative professionals.
Now you're a manager in
I'm a manager.
top investment firm.
Yeah.
Because you kept at it. You took action. You didn't feel sorry for yourself. You always went up with your education, and you kept going forward and said, I could do better than this, despite the pain you came from. And that's what we want people to hear. Despite the pain that you came from, we're not saying to deny it, but move on from it and find ways. It's not easy. Nobody's saying it's easy, but it's going to be worth it.
Right.
Because you have a good job now. You're living comfortably. You're independent.
Yeah.
And it's way above the childhood, in terms of, you said you came from poverty. Where you live now is a prestigious town. The company you work for, you've been doing very good. One of the things I want you to share in terms of spirituality, how was your experience with that? How did you pursue spirituality?
Well, in terms of spirituality, I think as a child, I'll just start there. I grew up Roman Catholic, but it wasn't like we were a family that went to church together every Sunday. We did the usual, we made our first communion, confirmation. But I wasn't brought up in a family that was, actively going to church. In terms of my older adult life, for me, the spirituality piece came in from me turning inward. So I still have my Catholic roots, and I still have those values. But I think I look at my life now more as a spiritual journey. And I look to what makes my life joyful and passionate, and where can I make a difference for somebody else. And that's done a world of good for me. And again, through the Be More You group, and I will say Landmark to a big degree. What I got from Landmark was, when you want to be joyful with yourself, you need to be up to something bigger than yourself in the world. And when you stop really having all these stories and conversations about yourself and concerns about yourself, when that stops and you get to do something bigger than yourself, you really become powerful. You really start to feel that your spirit starts awakening. When you're making a difference for other people, and you're not so concerned about being in your own head all the time. That's a lonely place to be.
Yeah, that's a lonely. So one of the things I know you had shared is that, and this is very important to share with the audience, is that you practice forgiveness.
Yes.
And if you keep blaming your dad or whoever for the situation, or say to your mom, in her case, she didn't protect you enough. She did her best at that time. But you took it upon yourself to forgive both of them. And I want you to, share that with the audience, because this is a big piece. If you don't forgive, you could get how much degrees? You could get the biggest job, you could have the biggest house, you could play in the biggest band. You will not have that peace.
No.
You will always be in a prison of the past. And I want you to share with the audience what you did, Mary, for yourself, because forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person, it's for you. Share with the audience what you did in terms of forgiveness with your parents.
Well, as I said, my dad passed away in 1999, so, I had a feeling through all the work I had been doing through the Survivors Week in Arizona, and then through my Landmark work, just kept hearing about, again, letting the past stay in the past. One of the things I had done was actually I wrote a letter to my dad. And in my letter, I basically said, I know what happened wasn't my fault. I know you were mentally ill. And, I really feel terrible about that. And I really want you to know that I'm okay now, and that I forgive you for all the things that everybody is angry, including myself, at you for doing. I really and truly, feel like it's made me the woman who I am. And I'm not saying thank you for the abuse, but I'm saying I'm letting it go. I'm letting the hurt go. And and I'm letting you know that it's okay. I'm okay with everything now.
How did that make you feel when you wrote that letter?
It just was a feeling of freedom.
Freedom, release.
It was a feeling of, I don't need to keep talking about this like as a hurtful thing. I don't need to keep reminding myself that I'm broken. I'm not broken. And that is a lesson I got very, very late in life, just in the past year or two. I'm not broken, I just have some skills I need to learn, and I'm getting them.
You're getting them. Yeah, you are, because you've taken, a lot of action. You spending the time and the money, and you've seen the results. Yeah, you're getting it. So that's what we want to share with people, is that it might, take you a little longer than other people, but the thing is, you got to keep trying.
Yes.
You have to take action. You got to ask people. You got to do research. You have to go on Meetup on the internet.
And again, you have to, if you can, get coaches, get mentors. We do it at our job. Right. At my job, in a corporate environment, we're always encouraged, have a mentor at work, somebody who can show you the ropes. But you know what? We need that in our personal life too. And along the lines of forgiveness, I also had a lot of anger toward my mother. Now, she's still alive, and I've always had this aching thing with me that if she passes away, and I don't ever come to terms with, how I feel, the resentment, the regret, she'll pass away and I won't have the ability to say anything to her different than, what I've been saying my whole life, which is, you're wrong. So I actually had an opportunity in the Landmark Forum to make a phone call to her. And it was a very, very hard, courageous thing to do. But I called her, and in the best way I knew how, and in the simplest way I could say the words, I just said, I just want you to know, I'm not angry anymore. And I know you did the best you could for us. And I don't want to make you wrong anymore, and I'm not going to. And I think on some level, she got it. On some levels, I think it didn't quite hit her the way I had hoped, because we're different people. She's a little bit more closed off than I am. But then after I hung up the phone, I said to myself, but that wasn't for her.
That's for you.
That was for me. So even if she didn't get it, it really wasn't for that purpose. I was able to say, I'm done. I'm done being mad. I'm done holding grudges. I think there'll always be a little tiny piece of me that still feels I have some work to do with her. But saying the words out loud to her was really a piece of my own recovery.
Yeah, it was. So Mary, you've been through a lot. You shared with us, some of the things you did to get where you are. So share with the audience now, where you are now in your life, and, with your relationships, with your jobs, just how life is for you now and what you foresee in the future.
Well, as I was saying a few moments ago, one of the things that has helped me is to give back. And so I have been volunteering for a local cat shelter for 18 years, and that comes in the form of, helping rescue and foster homeless, injured, abandoned cats. I've done that for a long time. That has helped me. I recently, actually this week, was selected to be the vice president of a brand new cat shelter in the area. So that's a huge accomplishment, because somebody who really didn't know me well saw all this energy and positive spirit coming out of me and said, I'd really love you to be on my board of directors. What do you say? I want to start this brand new shelter, and you've got all this inspiration and all these great ideas, and you're really lighting a fire under me, and I really want you to be part of it. So that's been a huge accomplishment, because I get to give back to something that's just starting out. Relationships are better in my life. Certainly dating. I've never been married. Still, I'm 48, and I'm still hoping to find that special person. But I do feel that all the work I had to do and all of the lessons and all of the exploration and discovery I had to do really had to be done before I could be successful with men.
Yeah.
So I have been dating somebody now for 4 months, and it's been going great. And I think I'm finding myself so much more open and so much more loving and softer. The wall that I used to have, and people used to say that to me, you have a wall and you can't penetrate it. That wall came down a couple of years ago, and I think I'm now putting into practice all these ways of being loving, authentic, honest, and flexible, and a little bit more giving to a relationship.
And with the cat shelter, I know you had a tagline, one miracle at a time. What?
Yeah.
I don't remember the entire.
Right. So on my email, my signature on my email says, making dreams come true, one tiny miracle at a time.
One tiny miracle at a time.
And that truly came out of me wanting to do more work for animals, because I want to do this huge fundraiser and raise money for this shelter. But it occurred to me after talking to you, and you had said, oh, I noticed your signature on your email. Tell me about it. And it didn't occur to me, but it actually applies to me too. So I look at my life as a series of tiny little miracles that I came through the other side. I made it. You know, I got through the other side. And not only did I make it through the other side, you know, I can feel my heart beating. I can feel myself being alive and joyful and grateful. Gratitude is a huge piece of this.
Forgiveness and gratitude.
Gratitude has become part of my life in the past, I'd say 6 months. Only as recent as 6 months ago.
And you talk about tools, and I give people a gratitude tool. You know, every time I coach people or even talk to people, and I have it in my book, is that simple. Just take a plain sheet of paper and draw one line. And on the left side, put 10 things you're grateful for. On the right side, what you desire. And I tell people, you cannot complain about what you have and expect to get what you want.
Right.
Gratitude is the key that opens the doors to your desires. You have to live in appreciation. You have to live in gratitude. Those people say, how I get unstuck. And I say, you want it quick? It's gratitude. It's forgiveness. You know, and gratitude, it all comes together. Gratitude, forgiveness, giving, you know, in charity, giving back, and realizing that there's so much abundance in this world. We don't need to cheat anybody.
No.
So once you have those basic values, you will see changes in your life.
And I come from a place of scarcity. You know, I grew up always looking over my shoulder, where's the next meal going to come from? Where's the next, you know, paycheck going to come from? And when you come from a place of scarcity and there's not enough, whether it's enough money, enough relationships, enough joy, whatever it might be that you're desiring, enough, you know, great jobs that I want to be able to have for myself, you always have to look at, where are you telling yourself a story that isn't attracting those things? And when you tell yourself, I'll never be able to find a great job, I'll never have a great relationship, that's the law of attraction working right in your favor. And so I've learned to, you know, the book The Secret, you know, two or 3 years ago I started reading that and was like, oh my goodness, actually if I change my thoughts, maybe that will be a way to open up all these new possibilities. And I'm not saying that I have big miracles, but as my email signature says, tiny miracles. And for each little tiny miracle that really I can be grateful. I wake up every morning and I say thank you, whether it's thank you for the good night's sleep I got. You know, something simple. Thank you for this cup of coffee this morning, that it's freezing out and I'm warm and I'm waking up. And I really have that now. I have that gratitude on a simple level.
Yeah, it's simple but so effective.
Absolutely.
Starts your day off on the right foot, and then before you go to bed at night. So I advise people to do that. So Mary, you shared with us you know, how your life was growing up, the things you did, honest student, going to college, having a great job, now in a great relationship. You know, music is just such an outlet for you. And despite all the pain, you sharing that, you know, you took the steps in terms of training, seminars, talking to people, being on the calls with Be More You, and really getting help. And you giving back as you talk to young women and you know, being in the Al-Anon is the name? The alcoholic.
Oh, Al-Anon.
Al-Anon, sorry.
Yes.
You know, and getting help there and talking to children who are in similar situation. So that's been really great, you know, sharing your story and where you came from and where you are now. And I know it's a great motivation and inspiration for people to know that they could do it too.
Absolutely.
So is there anything else you would like to share with us that we did not cover that you think might help the audience? Is there anything else, or any tools, or, you know, takeaways you want to leave with the audience?
Just to recap, you know, nothing different, just practice gratitude in whatever way you can find something to be grateful for, even when things are not going well. Find something in your day to be happy and grateful about. Be authentic to yourself. Really be who you need to be in the world. I've had to learn that in a very late part of my life. Like, don't squash who you are. Speak your truth. It takes a lot of courage because most people are going to be ruffled by somebody who maybe is saying something that feels too forthright. But you can temper that and find a way to say it without offending people. But truly, be who you are, be authentic. Find something that you're passionate about. Find something to give back to someone or something. In my case, it's, you know, homeless animals. I'm helping a woman make her dreams come true right now because she's starting a shelter from scratch, and I'm from the ground up, I'm with her. That's a huge undertaking. You know, satisfier for me. So I would say gratitude, be authentic, get coaching, mentors, people who will say, I see what you want to do, I'm with you, I got you back. I'm going to try to help you get there because I've learned some lessons too. And I went to the School of Hard Knocks and I can relate to you. Here's what worked for me. That's about it.
So that's pretty good. So, you know, Mary, thanks a lot for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All you shared with us. Again, I'm Alex Stephen from Live Your Passion. My company is Life Transforming Treasures. My website is www.alexstephen.com. And I want to read a quote, the quote from today in my book, Inspirational Life Quotes, a collection for your daily motivation. And today's quote is, it's gratitude.
It's gratitude. See, it was meant to be.
Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others. Marcus Cicero. And with that, I want to say thank you for joining us, and see you next time.
Production support provided by Medfield.tv. Access to our community.